And welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Thank you for watching. We appreciate it. In case you haven't noticed, it's hard to trust anything you hear right now. We've heard you. We're grateful that you trust us, and we will try to be worthy of your trust. We want to begin tonight by assessing some of the things no doubt you have heard about last week's presidential election. There are conflicting versions of virtually every part of that story. But as of right now, here's what we think we know. For much of election night, Donald Trump seemed to be leading in a number of key swing states. Then early Wednesday morning, he began to fall behind. That trend continued more or less for several days. On Saturday, the media declared Joe Biden the president-elect. Biden quickly accepted that judgment. The Biden campaign now has something called the Office of the President-elect. It sounds official, which of course is the point of setting it up. And in the end, it's possible it will be official. If, after all the questions have been answered, it becomes clear that Joe Biden is the legitimate winner of the presidential election, we will accept that, and we'll encourage others to accept it too. We're Americans first. We want what is best for this country. We want our system of government to continue. Whether it does continue, though, depends in part on how we proceed from here. As of tonight, tens of millions of Americans suspect this election was stolen from them. That means we now live in a country where a large percentage of our population no longer believes that our democracy is real. That is sad. It is also dangerous. It could easily get worse. What we're doing in response is hardly the solution. It is making our country much more volatile. It is setting us up for something bad. In a democracy, you cannot ignore honest questions from citizens. You're not allowed. You can't dismiss them out of hand as crazy or immoral for asking. You can't just cut away from coverage you don't like. You can't simply tell people to accept an outcome, because force doesn't work in a democracy. That's dictatorship. In a free society, you have to convince the public of your legitimacy. You have to win them over with reason. Democracy is always a voluntary arrangement. Telling voters to shut up is never enough. So in this case, tonight, there's only one way to lower the national temperature and unite the country. We need to find out exactly what happened in this election. And there are questions, and that means we have to answer them. For example, in Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Michigan, the Trump campaign has now collected signed affidavits that attest to criminal activity during the voting process. In the city of Detroit, witnesses have alleged under oath that ballots were improperly backdated and counted without matching signatures. One poll watcher alleges that 40,000 late unsealed absentee ballots were counted orally, and all of them went for Democrats. In the state of Nevada, 8 whistleblowers from within the Nevada Election Department say they witnessed voter fraud abetted by other election officials and by their supervisors. According to one affidavit, a poll worker saw people bringing handfuls of ballots to a Biden-Harris campaign van. Those ballots were then filled out at the van, placed in return envelopes. Eventually, Biden supporters formed a wall to block outsiders from seeing what they were doing. Meanwhile, according to voting records, people who were not even alive still somehow managed to vote on Tuesday. In New York, deceased voters cast absentee ballots. On October 9th in Nevada, a man called Fred Stokes Jr. mailed in his vote. The only problem was Fred Stokes Jr. died 3 years ago at the age of 92. The Republican Party of Nevada says it is aware of hundreds of other potential cases of dead people casting ballots. In Pennsylvania, records show turnout from several people who were born in the 19th century. They apparently rose from their graves to vote. Now, all of that is real. We spent all weekend checking it. False claims of fraud can be every bit as destructive as the fraud itself, so we need to be careful and responsible, all of us. But what we just told you is true, and there's more of it. Just hours ago in the state of Georgia, an election official admitted that they will find illegal votes and double voters when they check the voter rolls.
Let me be perfectly clear on another point. We are going to find that people did illegally vote. That's going to happen. There are going to be double voters. There are going to be people who did